For the 1 minute delay there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not too sure exactly what happened, but as soon as I went to start streaming and hit the go button, YouTube decided to tell me live streaming is unavailable currently. So I just went ahead and rebooted everything, and we're ready to rock and roll. We have a nice bit to talk about today. We're not only still looking at the flood risk out there for our Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, further to the north towards the Turks and Caicos Island, and seeing exactly how far to the east this might potentially spread out. We could see a little bit of residual impacts getting into the leeward islands of the Lesser Antilles, as well as our U.S. and British Virgin Islands just to the immediate east of Puerto Rico. We're going to take a look at all that. And we're also going to examine, as the title of this live stream presumes, where it is we might have to watch for an early season arrival, and exactly why it is that I do suspect that that could be one of our favorite hotspots. It might not necessarily be the Gulf of Mexico or the southeast coastline. It looks like it might be a region that we were very, very heavily speculating on at the end of last hurricane season, if you guys remember. So we'll go ahead and slowly but surely get started. We'll see if we get a few folks to join us this morning. It was a rather intimate live stream when we first initiated this broadcast on Saturday to discuss the imminent flood threat, or the risk, I should say, for the island of Hispaniola. It looks like, truthfully, some of those values may have been overblown a little bit. And don't get me wrong, we're still looking at some very heavy rainfall that is likely to be induced by our upper trough that we've been describing for the last several live streams. And we're going to look closely at what the totals are representing or reflecting today. But I'm not too sure yet. I want us to continue to brace for the actual tropical Atlantic activity. I don't want us to get overzealous now, but it does seem like as of this morning and rolling through into tomorrow, our precip amounts, at least in the 24 to 48 hour spectrum, don't seem as gratuitous as they were, for example, late last week, which is a good thing, and that typically is what happens. We've seen time and time again, whether it be heavy rainfall in the United States, heavy snowfall was a big thing this winter time in the U.S., and we usually see the models, especially the ensembles, they'll start way up here, and then as we get closer and closer in time, they'll start to trend down. And today, I have some good news, but albeit we still need to be prepared for some very, very heavy rainfall and a little bit of that elevated gusty winds out there for Hispaniola. Puerto Rico's definitely going to feel it. Jamaica, Lord willing, we can get some rain out there as well. Cuba, the southeastern Bahamas are going to feel it, and so on and so forth. Zenful, good morning. Amanda Kirby, thank you very much for joining us. Eyewall Addict, Ethan's Life, Shani Russell, Brian Florida, Tommy Andriopoulos, I hope I said that right, Alex Baller, 75, very good. And Nazaria, there is no early season formation. Are you sure about that? Because it does seem like we could have some early season development, and I'm going to show you exactly where it is that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. So with that being said, let's start rolling in here. We're going to take a look at the broad image here. First and foremost, I want to draw everyone's attention to the United States. We had another derecho event that occurred through Kansas, parts of Nebraska, now moving currently through the areas of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri. Obviously, this is no longer a derecho, but it does still carry with it a very, very heavy rainfall, localized flash flooding risk as it continues to transpire towards the Midwestern states. And we have another trough in the background here that's working its way, as always, over the United States Rocky Mountains, the northern central Rockies, that is expected to emerge over the northern and central plains and begin to bomb out for all intents and purposes and produce another widespread, scattered, severe threat for our areas in the lower Midwest, the Great Lakes, and in the northern central plains. I have Willow's fur floating around. No, Alex Baller, see, you got it all wrong. Don't fall into the GFS trap. I know far better than to do that. In fact, heck no. I'm very disappointed that there are some big names out there who've been doing this much longer than I have and have been mentioning development in the way of a hurricane. Heck no. But you'll see. You'll see. And if you still disagree with the science and what it is that I'm looking at, then, well, so be it. Let's take a look down at the tropics. So first and foremost, as we wander our way into the tropics, the Bahamas have been getting pummeled by some pretty significant weather activity. I saw some comments and reports on other videos and on other social media sources that they actually saw their own version of garden variety severe weather out there. They saw some hail, very strong convective winds, localized flooding associated with this pop-off garden variety convection that's moving off the Florida coastline. This is what affected Port St. Lucie, the southeast quadrant of the peninsula yesterday, and this is in direct association association with that trough that's going to be moving down towards the southeast and is going to help up to scoop all this equatorial moisture off the eastern Pacific monsoonal trough, and I still have Willow's Fur, and northern South America. It's going to pull that north. So as this trough digs in and scoops all that up, that is primarily what is going to create that risk for very heavy rainfall, that flood risk, and the elevated winds. So otherwise, we're very quiet. We've lost our areas of interest in the eastern Pacific. You can see remnant thunderstorms right along the monsoonal trough associated with those puppies. Both of those, I'm not mistaken, are no longer designated by NHC. I'm not going to pull it up because they're not an area of concern right now. No sense in wasting time on that. And then look at this little guy right here. Very fascinating. We have our first official tropical wave, a little perturbation moving out there on the ITCZ. Not very heavily affected by our dust. So that's another area I want us to pay close attention to, not necessarily for development, but I want us to watch the evolution of these tropical waves as they come off. This one's fairly weak. It's very low amplitude. If you look at 700 and 850 and you look at the streamlines out there, it isn't the most aggressive tropical wave. You can kind of see it just doing this little wave action, doing the wave and, all that, right along that equatorial convergence line. But another reason I bring this up is because this is going to survive its trek across the Atlantic over northern South America, and here, right there, is what I want us to pay close attention to. All right, I lied. Maybe not close attention, but I want us to pay attention. Let's put it that way. So with that being said, we have another groundbreaking piece of information to pass along to you guys. Boom! El Nino is done. If you didn't think it was done before, she is, or I should say he in this case, is done as of May 20th, a very pivotal day. May 20th, 5/20th, 2024, we are officially in the 3-point, give me my pen back, thank you, we are in the 3-4 index, and we are now officially into a negative 0.026. So El Nino, if you wanted to make a case that, it's still a warm, nope, game over. So we can officially say bon voyage to El Nino. I have personally thought we've been in a neutral phase for a considerable amount of time already, especially once we wandered below that 0.5 threshold back into late April, getting into the beginning of this month when we saw it really start to decrease after we hit the 1st of May and so on and so forth. But now there is no debating it. We are officially into a cool anomaly. I know it's like this big. Negative 0.02 is not very much, but either way, we're in the negatives now, and this is translated across the spectrum. I'll go ahead and pull up our ocean analysis suite here, and we'll take a look at them all. If you look at the 1 and 2, the 1 and 2 is still well into La Nina. We are at a negative 0.7, which is definitely weak La Nina territory. If we come over to the 3, definitely into weak La Nina territory, 0.53, negative 0.53. Here comes Willow. She's taking her usual spot on my lap, joining us for the live stream. Say good morning, Willie. Yep, you're on live camera. Say hi. Are you going to say hi to anybody? You just know you're being watched. That's what it is. You just know that you're being watched, and now you're going to be all bashful. So there's the 3 index, and then what's also very interesting is if you come over to 4, the 4 is finally starting to come down as well. We are now at a 0.5. Positive 0.5. We have been holding steady right around 0.7, 0.8 for the longest time, and we are slowly starting to see that upwelling begin to occur through all of our ENSO regions. And I know it has been occurring for a little while now, but the 4 has been the stubborn region furthest out there in the westernmost Pacific in comparison to where the rest of the ENSO regions are, and she's also finally starting to boil down. And if you look at this on the grand perspective, yeah, there's definitely a neutral pattern, La Nina, really sneaking in at this point. There's so many cool anomalies, it almost looks like the equatorial Pacific, the east and central portion to the east of our date line is just cold at this point. Some activity still going on our PDO, but we're cool out there. May 20th, happy birthday. Yay, Sharon, happy birthday, and you made it. Ethan's life as well. You're in the chat. Good to see everybody. Nice to see everyone on this wonderful Monday. Ryan Levine, thank you for joining us. But happy birthday, Sharon, and welcome in. I know you've been commenting on the last couple of streams. It's been very difficult to join first thing in the morning, but thank you very much for taking some time out of there now. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes, shall we? Let's move over to our probabilities. So the probabilities have been ebbing and flowing. Yesterday at 12 Zulu, the Southern Caribbean definitely had my attention. 192 hours out, 216, 240, 264, and then 280. Notice that we have a good area of... Can I have my pen? Thank you. We have a good area of probabilities that have been holding steady down there for the last several days. This is not the one run that this decided to pop up on. I've been watching it since we did our live stream beforehand. If you notice, back there, 288 hours, still there. You go back to 17th at 0Z. Still there, but I'll be very weak because we can't see that far out in time. We go to the 19th at 0Z, still there. If you go to the 20th this morning, still there for sure. So this is an area that we'll have to watch. It looks like the 0Z run overnight has decreased our probabilities, but I'm also noticing something that I wouldn't say I was forecasting, but I also noticed that there is that discontinuity that I guess you could say you would anticipate for something moving through that region. And I wanted to draw this on the thumbnail, but I'm trying to stay away from those really, really spooky, dorky looking, big old arrow things pointing up this way, pointing that way, which is why I just drew my little yellow blob down there for the Southern Caribbean, with a little bit of it ebbing up towards the north, and then the rest of it continuing to go through Central America. Because I do think that unless we do see some organization, that thing is just going to crash through Central America, and it may arise in the Eastern Pacific as something that we'll try to develop. But right now, it looks like the European model is definitely on the ball with that wave coming across the Atlantic and becoming something a little bit more worth watching in terms of energy and precip action down there for Central America, Northern South America, the coastal areas of Colombia, I should say, and the ABC Islands. But from here, we have a fork in the road, and I'll show you a little bit more why that is. But our probabilities are there. If you look at the cyclone probabilities or cyclone locations, it's not the most gratuitous amount of support, but the Euro is seeing something. If you look down there, there are some ensemble members that try to pick up on a weak area of low pressure. Some of them go up like this, crash into the the wind shear that's up to the north, are somewhat unfavorable conditions, and then it dies. Could it make it? Yeah, absolutely, but we would need to organize quickly in the Caribbean. We would have to consolidate and execute whatever it is we're going to do very fast, and as we all know from past experience, that doesn't tend to happen. And then you can see a couple of ensembles coming out there in the Eastern Pacific where if it does continue to crash and bomb across South America, then move through Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and then emerge in the East Pac, it has another chance of possibly forming up out there. It goes without saying, as Alex Baller already mentioned, our GFS is on the ball with this as well. It actually has pretty good ensemble member support for something sneaking its way out of the Caribbean as we get into the early parts of June. You can see right there, bam. Lots of good member support, and unfortunately this draws it right up towards Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and then there's the good old state of Florida. So we're definitely watching. Am I sounding the alarm or freaking out on anything? No, but we're definitely watching. Like I mentioned, we have to watch the signals, and the signals are slowly but surely piling up. And I'll show you even other pieces of data, because I know a lot of folks will mention GFS Euro, GFS Euro, GFS Euro. I love to be devil's advocate when looking at stuff like this. You can't just go one way or the other. And whether there is no one way or the other, there's no straight and narrow, there's no black and white. So we're going to look at a number of things. And so what I did here is I pulled up some very rare models. If Scrooge McDuck is in the chat this morning, I haven't seen his username pop up, but I know he likes the UK Met, fairly reliable model. So we're going to look at the UK model really quick, and we're just going to scroll through time. And as you can see, here comes our wave. Very weak, but it's there, right in through here. Notice this little bit of an acceleration in the winds and this upside down trough right there. There's your tropical wave moving through the Atlantic. And like I mentioned, for you guys out there who keep mentioning dry air, dry air, dry air, this is our first wave. This is like our science experiment. And we're watching, and this wave makes it across the Atlantic. It's going to make it. It might not be the most potent, robust, rapid intensification kind of thing, but it will survive its trek through the MDR. And just as I've been mentioning on this channel, for my longtime viewers out there, where have we been mentioning that we are going to watch for our greatest chances of development? Right in through here. Right in through there. Right now, because it's still so early into the year, we're not going to see these waves coming up as far north as the Windward Islands, the Leeward Islands, for example. They're going to take a southerly course right around that negative 10 degree, or that 10 degree latitude line, I should say, and continue to move west-northwest around our subtropical high pressure that's to its north. So we're already seeing things coming together that some folks were still hit or miss about. And what's very interesting, if we fast forward to 114, 126, and we let this thing emerge out over the southern Gulf, you could see right here we have that increase in our winds. Our vorticity starts to go up. So the UK model, even though it only goes out 168 hours, has this puppy surviving its trek across the Atlantic and emerging somewhere in the easternmost Caribbean. You can see this really good channel of easterly winds and a little bit of kinking in our streamlines. So it's trying to indicate that there is some kind of tropical activity in there, very weak, very disorganized. This is likely going to bring some needed rain for our Windward Islands and the ABC Islands in northern South America. This is where it gets a little more interesting. So we're going to come over to the KMA model. Again, don't come into the chat, please, and don't view this live stream and think that we're trying to hype up a storm by using these weird models. No, what we're doing is trying to find a happy medium. The GFS has already predicted major Hurricane Alberto. That's not going to happen. And we all know the Euro tends to remain on the rather conservative side. So what I'm doing here is, instead of going wide left or wide right, as I like to explain, we're going to look down the middle and we're going to take a look at other models that folks may or may not be looking at on a regular basis. The ICON, the CMC, the KMA, the JMA, the UK model. We got to look at everything and kind of try to put everything together. So as you can see on the KMA, we have our very weak tropical wave, and you blink and you miss it. The KMA honestly does not think it's going to be very impressive. In fact, my head is blocking it. Let me move my head to the opposite side of the page here so you guys can see a little bit better. There we go. There's our wave right here, and I'll draw it in for you guys on the static image. There's your tropical wave. You can see that really good cyclonic kinking in our streamlines, a little bit of increased wind activity on the backside of where that trough axis is. And as you track it through time, there she goes. She crashes into northern South America, and then bam, right there. We're starting to show ourselves in the central and southern Caribbean. You can see this acceleration in the winds, a little bit of vorticity in our wind flow down there. And if you watch right where I have my circle drawn, the KMA model has a low pressure that starts to lift up right there. Very disorganized, but it looks like it tries to get pulled up towards the north. And if you notice, it could go one of two ways, and the KMA model wants it to move more in a northwesterly fashion, because here's our winds off of our high pressure out there in the Atlantic. We have very good, strong easterly trade winds over the MDR, and then look at all this weak wind to the north here. So this makes a lot of sense if our trough or our low pressure, whatever you want to call it, if our disturbance, that's what we'll call it, our wave disturbance, our energy is down here in the Caribbean. It has one direction to go, and that's up like this, because that is our area of, or our path of least resistance right there. If you look, we have westerly winds coming in out of the Pacific across Central America, and this is down at the surface, obviously, so don't use this to determine your environmental flow, but I'm just kind of getting a feel for it here. There's our high pressure out in the Atlantic, so we have high pressure out in through here. We have our trade winds moving out of the east out across the MDR into the Caribbean, and then we have what could be some Central America, Southern America, or South America, South America higher pressure down in through here. So it only has one area to go, and that's towards the west-northwest or the north-northwest. So very interesting that the KMA is trying to put something together down there as well. If we come over here to our GFS 31 ensembles for 0Z, the control member doesn't have anything too exciting on it. The control member has, and you know what, I'll go ahead and I'll zoom this in. We'll go panel by panel. It might take us a little while, but we'll go panel by panel so you guys can actually see it properly. The 31, or the first control member of the GFS, as we roll into early June, just has an area of precip down there in the Caribbean. But if you look across the spectrum here, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3. That fourth one that's just off the screen is very interesting. We have 4, we have 5, we have 6, we have, that's not 1, there's 7, there's 8, there's 9, there's 10, there's 11, there's 12, there's 13, and I'll go ahead and I'll move it around now so you guys can see. So Control member of the GF, and before you guys start throwing rocks and stoning me again because of the GFS, we're looking at the ensembles here, guys. We're not looking at the operational model. The operational model, we're going to crumple that up and throw it out because the operational model went from Cat 4 Alberto to nothing. So we're not looking at that. We're looking at our different ensemble members to get a feel for why it is the GFS is doing what it's doing. So the control member doesn't have anything on there, and pardon me if I'm looking up and you see my chin and up my nose more than anything. It's because my OBS is up here, and I want to make sure I manipulate the screen properly. If you look at controls members 1 and 2, we have something in the Caribbean. This is where it gets a little more interesting. If you look at control member 5, we have what looks to be a rather, whoops, I just messed it up. We have a strong system impacting the west coast of Florida. If you look down to the bottom, or the second row of control members, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different members highlighting something. It looks like there's a low pressure area off the east coast on number 11. We have a low pressure beginning to build in the Caribbean on number 10. Number 9 doesn't really have anything worth worrying about. Number 8 has some activity out there, albeit very dispersed in comparison to what the general trend here looks like. Number 7 has a little bit of activity out there. And I messed up the panel again. If you swing back down towards the bottom members, you can see we have, the general thinking is that's going to be an area to watch. And now I'll go ahead and zoom back out so we can see the whole picture again. And I want to give you guys a disclaimer because, again, we want to stay away from the fictional realm of impossibility, and we want to stay towards the realistic outlook. Is something likely to form? Are we in a very confident phase right now? No, we're not very confident. Are the signals there? Yes. Am I predicting a Cayman Island, Florida landfall? No. Right now, we're looking at circumstantial evidence and building a case for everything. We'll use this as a visual representation. So we have our Euro probabilities. That goes into the pile. We have our GFS cyclone members. That goes into the pile. Do we have full-on agreement from our operational models? No, so we can throw that out. Do we have any other agreement from any other operational models? No, so we throw that out. Do we have circumstantial evidence provided by at least some, if not a good majority, of our ensemble members? Yes, so we can put it into the pile. Right now we have 3 sheets of paper in our evidence pile, and we've thrown the rest out. We'll pick the rest up later if we continue to mount this evidence to make our case, or if things continue to trend down, we're just going to throw everything away. You know what I mean? So that's what we're looking at here. Unfortunately, the Euro does not have an overlay like this. Otherwise, I would have loved to pull up an overlay to show all the individual members. I think it's great that GFS has something like this, but we don't have that for the Euro. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to glaze over it. Now let's get into I saw the how close are we? Welcome in. Good morning, everybody. So we do have a little bit of activity on our control member. And like I said, I wish we had a panel overlay like that for our European ensembles, the EPS members, because it would help give us a better idea of what the Euro was thinking in terms of this direction, that direction, or somewhere in a happy medium. So now let's look a little bit closer into the Central Caribbean islands. So as you can see, this is going to be our 6 hourly precip. And if you guys have been a longtime follower of my channel, I'm not a fan whatsoever of trying to communicate to you guys a heavy rain or a flood, a heavy snow threat by simply looking at total accumulation. That is inaccurate. You're going to have inflated numbers across the spectrum because you're looking at, from the start of this loop, from 0 all the way to 240 hours, how much is going to accumulate over those 7 to 10 days. That's not the way to forecast a heavy rain situation. In this case, we want to look at 6, 12, 24, and then total to get a better feel for the intensity of the rainfall, where it is likely to collect the most, and then we can nail it down from there. So this is for Wednesday, and as you can see, the Euro is actually thinking we're going to get a lot more heavy rainfall to the west of where our models were initially thinking, as opposed to, and the GFS has had that eastward bias. It's been like that since the end of last week, Saturday when we did our special update and so on. Then there goes our main event right there. That's when it starts to happen, and you can see within the 6-hour windows, we do get quite a bit of heavy rainfall for the Dominican Republic. It tries to bleed over into Haiti, but it does look like the DR is what's going to get slammed the most, with a little bit of eastward bleed over into Puerto Rico. The western side of the island is going to see some heavier rainfall, but at the same time, we don't want to rule out the rest of the island because we have a lot of really good mountainous terrain out there, and those mountains are going to act like ramps as this energy in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere come in, and it's going to force condensation of your clouds, force development of additional thunderstorms. We saw it all the time out there in western Conus. You get a little bit of moisture out there in the environment, and those mountains act like ramps. You have your moisture coming in a certain direction, it hits the mountains, goes up, condenses, and it rains out. So if we switch over to our total precip, now we can go hour by hour and see where it is our greatest threat for rainfall is likely to occur. And you could definitely see that the Dominican Republic is bullseyed for a large majority of it. The Turks and Caicos Islands could definitely see quite a bit of rainfall as well. And off the screen here, we can't see it. I do think Jamaica is going to see some very good rainfall from this as well. If you notice, the Euro does not favor Puerto Rico at all. Puerto Rico is looking at maybe a couple millimeters of rain. That doesn't even equate to a full inch of rain, which is very interesting here. This new model here is going to be in millimeters. And as we know, it takes a pretty decent amount of that accumulation to build up to a full inch. And so here we're looking at maybe a max of 1 to 2 inches over Dominican Republic and Haiti. And then Puerto Rico is, I'm not too sure what the Euro is thinking here. Let's go back to 0Z. We'll go a little further out in time and get a better look at it. 0Z is probably going to, there we go. Now this makes a little more sense. This is, and again, really good evidence as to why I don't like to use total precip to show you guys the forecast. Because notice the difference between coming here, the 6Z hour by hour. We stop here, and this is on Thursday. This is the end of the day, Thursday, moving into Friday. And this should be right about where that event is ending. And so total precip for that one event in particular, as our initial push of energy and moisture comes out of the Caribbean and hits you guys, we're looking at maybe 1 to 2 possibly isolated areas of 3 to 4 inches max. If I switch back over to our total precip at 0Z and go all the way through the loop, notice how all of a sudden this looks a lot more scary. And we have several inches of rainfall piling up on the eastern extent of the Dominican Republic, the eastern half of Hispaniola. We actually have a couple inches of rainfall getting into Puerto Rico, and lots of rain affecting the southeast Bahamas, Cuba, and then Jamaica, who's just off the screen there. So a night and day difference. That's why I like to look at different layers and stack it all up on each other, because that's when you get your more realistic representation for an individual event. You don't want to say this system is going to cause this and then show total precip for about a week's time. That's not going to show you this event. It's not going to prove anything. If you come over to the GFS ensembles 24-hour precip, it has it pretty nailed down. We're looking at really good consistency between the Euro and the GFS now. There is not a whole lot of westward, eastward wobble to this. It does look like Dominican Republic or the whole island of Hispaniola is going to see the greatest total precip with this. And the GFS does have a little bit of that eastward bleed over into Puerto Rico, the U.S. British Virgin Islands. This is back into inches as well. And within 24 hours, it looks like the Dominican Republic specifically, with a little bit of that impacting Haiti, could try to get upwards of 1.5 to 2 inches of rain in 24 hours. So now again, going back to why I like to go against the grain and not just look at total precip altogether. If you're going to look at flood conditions, you don't want to look at flooding over 10 days. That's not a flash flood. That's not a flood. That's just total rainfall piling up on each other. A flood would be if you had an enormous amount of rain hit you within an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours, 32 hours, and you just keep compounding it on based on how large scale of an event. If it's a thunderstorm, you're looking more at the couple of hour threshold. If it is a synoptic scale large feature like this, then you want to look at that 24 to 48 hour threshold. That's why we have 24-hour precip pulled up here, and it looks like our heaviest rain is definitely going to be channeled up over the island of Hispaniola and then up towards the north, maybe missing a large majority of the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos before turning out to sea and disappearing. Also, pay close attention. You could see that tropical wave moving in from the Atlantic that's going to help to really re-intensify our total precip. And then look at that. As a matter of fact, this is our GEFS. I just noticed this. As that wave comes through, there's something that lifts up in that direction. I'll go back in time so we can follow it. So there goes our tropical wave. If you guys are having trouble seeing it, right now it is right over the Windward Islands. I'm looking at this area of precip action right there. That is your tropical wave. And if you track it through, I'll go a couple panels. I'll go incrementally through and track it through with you guys. So this is 198 hours. She is going to be situated somewhere right in through there. Let's go 204, 210, 216, 222. And then it finally reemerges right there. So there she is down here. And then if you continue the loop towards the very end, the ensemble precip has something lifting. Very interesting. Look at that. So we have like diverging 24-hour precip kind of in this sort of fashion as you get towards the very tail end of the loop. Very interesting right there. So you see that wave come across South America. It's going to re-intensify our rain chances for Jamaica, Hispaniola, a little bit of an effect of Puerto Rico. But then as that system tries to consolidate and become something more, Cayman Islands and Jamaica are going to see a heavy rainfall threat, possibly into the beginning of June. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, we're way out there in time. This is likely going to change. Has this been trending, though? Let's go back and let's see. Has that been the general thinking for a little? It has, actually. Look at that. So, yeah, I would say as we get into the beginning of June, if I have folks in Jamaica watching, if I have folks from the Cayman Islands and Cuba watching, your rain chances are going to go up, and that's going to be your welcomed celebratory event for the hurricane season initiation. Because, yeah, the general thinking is we're going to start to see a lot more rainfall impacting Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Our seasonal pattern is definitely going to shift, and we're going to see that influx of moisture for certain. What is the 6Z show? I don't like looking at our 6 Zulu because, yeah, no, the 6Z is still on par. So the 6Z, very, very good consistency. Very good consistency that we're going to see a lot of rain and a lot of tropical moisture out there. Here is our European model. Euro, once again, keeps a lot of that heavy rainfall right over Hispaniola. It does almost exactly the same thing as the GFS does, with a little bit more of that rainfall hugging the coastline, the eastern side of Jamaica, so we can't rule out Jamaica is going to see some very heavy rainfall. Thank you, Shania, for joining us from the Cayman Islands. Excellent. I'm glad we have a few folks in here so we can start getting the word out. Heavy rainfall is likely going to occur for your area as we get into the very beginning of June. And look at that. Even the European model, you can track your tropical wave. Here's your wave right there. Tropical wave is definitely very apparent on the Euro ensembles for total precip or 24-hour precip. You can track that through. There goes our first system working its way up and out. By the time it is out of the Caribbean, up and through here, there's your wave getting ready to move towards the Windward Islands. So Barbados, Trinidad, Tobago. I forget. I really need to get back up into I think St. Lucia, Martinique. Who else is down there in the windward half of the islands? You're going to have to watch for your rain threat increasing as we get towards the tail end of May and into June. And then even on the European model, you can track that bad boy through and see how it increases our rainfall even more for Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands. And even on the Euro 24-hour precip, you can see that there is something lifting up right there. So it's a bummer. Actually, you know what? I'm dumb. I'm genuinely ridiculous. Time out. What am I doing? We could look at the AI European model and see, because that is a long-range model. We can look at the AI model and see what the AI is thinking from the Euro. I forgot that it goes that far out now. We can take a look and see if it actually predicts very similar to what the GFS is thinking. So there goes our first system. There's our wave. You can see the wave right here. Lots of really good rainfall. We'll have to keep a close eye out for our Windward Island folks in the ABC Islands. That wave's going to come in and give you a little bit of a thrashing. And then as you go forward in time, does the Euro AI model think anything is going to sneak up out of there? No, it does not. So Euro thinks that it's going to crash into Central America and not do anything. And then there looks like another wave comes in right after that. Right there, it looks like at the very tail end of our AI Euro, 360 hours out, June 3rd, there might be another wave that's sneaking its way into the Lesser Antilles. So the key takeaway here is not necessarily looking for development from each of these individual perturbations, but the fact that they are surviving their trek. That is another wave, yeah, because there goes our first wave right there. You can see it. And I had an epiphany yesterday, as a matter of fact. Anguilla, yes, we'll see some rain. Anguilla is definitely going to get some rain. Thank you, Extreme Weather Chaser. Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. Perfect. Thank you very much. I had a cheat sheet written down for last hurricane season, and I lost it. I don't know where it is. So you can best believe between now and June 1st, I'm going to be rehearsing the Lesser Antilles and all the geography down there so I can just boom, 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 rapid fire like some people out there do. The big thing I want to emphasize here is not necessarily... Yeah, look at that. Wow. The big thing I want to emphasize here is not looking for development with each of these individual waves, but the fact that they are surviving their trek across the Atlantic, because there's another wave right there. second half of the Euro artificial intelligence model has a second wave that survives its trip through the MDR, where supposedly all that dry, dusty air is going to be, and makes its way into the Lesser Antilles. So your rain chances are going to stay elevated for an extended period of time as this wave train slowly begins to initiate. What does our wind shear out there look like? It almost looks like we will. Yeah, it almost looks like we're going to have a favorable setup for little to no wind shear. And I know that this is 500 millibar heights, folks. I know that we're not looking at our actual shear model, but what I'm looking at here are our thickness lines, the height anomalies through here. Because if you have an understanding of the way the atmospheric heights work, you can determine more or less where your winds, your wind shear, your jets are going to be. As you can see up through here, this looks like where our polar front jet is, and that lines up excellently because there's a low right along that area of discontinuity in our heights, which means we probably have a frontal boundary right through there, supported by the polar front jet, and it looks like our subtropical jet is somewhere up through here, which would indicate to me that down closest to our Antilles in the Caribbean, our wind shear is starting to back off a little bit. Let's see, what can we look at to try to reinforce this? There you go. So it does look like our wind shear is slowly but surely starting to relax. And there's that really good area of anticyclonic flow down there over the southern Caribbean. MDR is starting to clear its wind shear out. Still quite a bit occurring over the central Atlantic, over the subtropics, and just to the north of our MDR, but it's slowly trying to get out of there. Here's our dust. We're going to look at the dust as we get ready to start concluding. I'm noticing the dust is not as robust as it should be, or as it is, and I wonder if that's the reason these waves are starting to make it across the, let me not draw black on black. I'm wondering if that's why the waves are making it through the MDR, because they are coming off further to the south. Like I had said a few live streams ago, I'm really starting to wonder if because the temperatures are so dang hot out there in the MDR, they really are. Let's go back to our ocean analysis suite and let's take a look up close. So those waters are extremely hot. They are very hot. And I know that sounds very hype-ish, but they are. They're setting records through the days. I've been seeing it on X and the old Twitter. People are posting that the global tropics, the MDR, the tropical Atlantic is just going crazy right now. We are starting to see a little bit of warming in our subtropics in the mid-latitudes, which could influence the latter half of the season. But notice just how hot we are. It is extremely hot near our islands in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and very hot in our MDR. So I'm wondering, I really am, I'm really speculating if each of these dust plumes that come off, especially these very big ones, that's going to be this could be almost concerning. That's going to be a very, very northerly push of our dust. That's almost to the north of our Cabo Verdes, which would tell me that we might have a very low-end, very weak, thermally induced high pressure that builds into the north and drives those waves down to the south away from our area of dry, dusty air. Because we just saw in the European AI model that we have not one but two possible waves, give me my ink, that wander in like this. They dodge it to the south. So very interesting, and this makes sense. Because if we come over here, I've been trying to forecast our dust. You could see that we had a very, very weird, elongated, subtropical high pressure anticyclone over the western side of North Africa, the northwest quadrant of North Africa. As that reorients and builds back in over western North Africa, almost particularly right there, that's where that dust outbreak begins. You can see that we have an increase in our southerly flow just off the southern coast of Africa. That is why our dust is going to increase for a little bit of time, but then it almost looks like as we get a little further out, we might not get as much. It looks like it's going to start to pull to the north because of this trough that's being introduced up to the northern side of Africa. Here's our heat anticyclone. That's our Saharan heat low. The Saharan heat low at the surface is one of our prime contributors to the discontinuity that creates that easterly wave or that easterly jet that produces our waves. And this is very interesting because this trough helps to aggravate the low and pull it towards the north. So that's probably why our NASA dust model here has such a northerly push in our Saharan dust. It's not going to sit around. This is our 10-degree latitude line, and if our waves continue to follow the 10-degree latitude line, they're going to be right on the periphery, the south side of that sand, which is where we'll see a little bit of that enhancement, if not any influence at all, because it's going to avoid it for the most part. So that's very interesting. This is something we're going to have to continue to monitor. If you look at our 850 temperature anomalies, you can see that our Saharan heat low does establish itself right around that same time we see that big push. See all those warm anomalies on the western side of Africa here? If you come back to our NASA model, notice we have quite a bit at that same time, the 27th and the 28th, really good indications that that plume is going to be alive and well and very, very readily apparent. But then as you go even further into June, look at those cold anomalies. So this might not be this. We're going to have to see this. We're going to have to see if this forecast verifies, because this puts our Saharan heat low back in an easterly phase. Look at how our hot anomalies are out there towards the Middle East. This is Saudi Arabia, and this is our Middle East AOR. We have cool anomalies up there off the Horn of Africa. So this could shut down our Saharan dust layer for a little while. We can't go any further through time. We'll have to see if this actually holds together and this doesn't suddenly change. But look at that. We have cool anomalies establishing itself up off the northwest coast of Africa, which is going to shut down our heat low. Our heat low is going to turn off. And as you can see here in our warm anomalies, it'll go into an easterly phase, which this could change things for June. We'll have to see. This is, again, we're theorizing here. I've only just started to wet the taste buds in terms of studying what the Saharan dust layer does and how it actually behaves out there. But yeah, this has been trending on our Euro. This is the European ensembles, our 850 millibar temperature anomaly to determine where our heat low and our dust is going to be aggravated. And we want to see the warmest anomalies here. We want to see the warmest anomalies here in Africa, because as that turns up and begins to, I guess you can say for all intents and purposes, suck in that Saharan dust, that anticyclone I showed you guys in the upper levels is what increases our easterly jet, and that's what helps to flow it around and fling it into the Atlantic, and that's what creates all your dry, dusty air there. But this is very interesting. We have a cold pool here, and our warmest anomalies are here. So if you do the math, well, not the math, but if you do the forecast and build yourself a forecast looking at these temp anomalies, our anticyclone is going to be up here. And if we have cool anomalies up here, that could lead to high pressure, and it helps to smother a lot of that dust. So we're going to still see some dust, but it might not be as ridiculous. This could also lead you to wonder if this is going to shut down our easterly jet, and we're not going to see as much of a jet stream up there as we would ordinarily. No, in fact, it doesn't look like it does much. In fact, it almost looks like the trough axis up there tries to re-intensify our anticyclone, and we're still going to get our African easterly jet, which means we're going to have our waves trying to come across Africa. That trough, Mick, if you're still in the chat, that trough could give us that little nudge to keep those waves propagating in a more southerly direction as well. Let's go out to the entire tropical Atlantic so we can see where that jet is. Yeah, look at that. So, according to this, at 500 millibars, if we were going to see tropical waves coming off of Africa, they are definitely going to be a lot more further south than they would have been like last year. Last year, for example, we had Brett and Cindy that came across like this. Somewhere right in through there is where they came across. This would suggest they're going to come out a little bit further to the south. This would indicate they're going to be ejected. I didn't want to use that same color. They're going to be ejected down here. Just to do a quick sanity check, and I know we're derailing the live stream here. I know we have to keep it brief, but I just want to do a sanity check. Tropical Storm Brett 2023. Yeah, see that? So Brett was definitely further to the north. He was above that 10-degree latitude line. Here's 10 degrees. And this was the song and dance for much of hurricane season last year. We had a lot of storms that really did not go right around that 10-degree line. They were more like around 12 to 14. Lee was about a 12 and then ended up moving up like this. Nigel was about a 12 to 13, ended up moving like this. Margot was a very high latitude storm. I believe she was around 13, 14, and then got sucked due north, almost running parallel to Africa and Europe. If this verifies, if this stays true, then these African easterly waves are going to be moving right around that 10-degree latitude line. And climatology proves that anything that forms at 10 or even to the south and tries to wobble north has a greater chance of making its way across the Atlantic into the Lesser Antilles. So now it's a matter of, is this going to be the prevailing pattern, or is this June climatology? We'll have to see. Obviously, we're only getting into the very periphery of June. So, again, it sounds great. It sounds fantastic. It sounds very scientific, but we need to see what the rest of June looks like. We need to see what July looks like, and then we'll know when it really matters, August, September, and October, what that Cape Verde setup looks like. It could stay down to the south because of the dust, or it could slowly but surely nudge its way north. That's going to be the big determinant. I know climatology, the climo models, do have it slowly being nudged to the north as it goes through time, but we'll see. We'll see if those waters play any role on that. This is another reason now we can get into our actual conclusion, the takeaway. This is another reason why I do think that we could have early season development. And when I say early, I don't necessarily mean within June 2nd. I mean just early season development between the months of June and then into July. Because if you look, this is our European control member of the 200 millivar vertical velocities, where our divergent flow is and where our convergent and downward flow is. And right now, we're just not having it. This is the 16th of May at the start of it. We are obviously now on the 20th of May, so if you look, really not having it. We're not having it whatsoever. A lot of negative velocities, negative downward forcing, subsidence, however you want to describe it. It's just not working. But then right in through here, and I'll change the color even, we'll go green, like they say in Twister, going green, greenage. June 1st, we have a really solid window of very, very good velocity anomalies, not only for the Gulf of Mexico, but for the Caribbean. This is a vertical, I guess you can say vertical, I forget the terminology for it, but it's like a vertical chronological chart. And as you go down the chart, you're going further in time. And you use this chart down here to use as a legend to look at your longitudinal lines here. So this is your 60-degree west. This is your international date line. So right in through this area here is going to be your Gulf of Mexico and your Caribbean. And then if you notice, kind of lines up with what we were looking at in terms of where our dust and where our easterly jet is going to form up. Even the MDR begins to come into a very good, favorable range as we go through the month of June. Very good vertical anomalies there, vertical velocities. This is corroborated by our GFS. The GFS does not go as far out, but you can see right now we're just not having it. As you go into the latter parts of May, I mean, we're already there, it's May 20th, but as we go through May, red anomalies, and then finally, as you get into early June, we start to see our really good vertical velocities establish itself over the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. GFS does not give that propagation a vote of confidence for the MDR, but we'll have to see as we get further out there. Anomalies, the Nino 3-4 region have gone towards negative values. La Nina is on its way, storm 962. Absolutely, that's what we kind of started the brief. That's what we started the discussion with, is now there's no arguing. El Nino is gone. We are in our negative anomalies out there. Isn't it concerning that we are below average in the number of worldwide storms? It is, to an extent. There's a lot of people out there really speculating big time because of how anomalous this hurricane season could be. Some people are saying it could be hyperactive. Some people are saying it's going to be a bust. It could be a bust. And you know what? I'm on the same page. I actually agree with that. With everything that's shaping up, not only in our atmosphere, but just how crazy the waters are behaving, it's either going to go one way or another. It's not going to be a conservative season. I really do not think, at least based off of everything I've looked at, my best scientific guess, this won't be a average season. It's not going to be a 2022. This isn't going to be a 2004 or 2003. It's not going to be, we'll have 15 storms, maybe a couple landfalls, and we'll call it good. This is either going to be chaos, or this is going to be even bigger of a hype season than last year. Last year, I think, was a hype season. We really didn't have anything happen. Sure, it was above average in activity, but we didn't really have very much impact anywhere. We saw lots of heavy rain. Heavy rain was the song and dance last year. We had a dahlia, but heavy rain was the main theme of last year. That's why I call it the hype season. Everybody was like, whoa, Lee, Cat 5. For some reason, there was that TikTok girl who said a Category 6 was going to hit Florida in September. That didn't happen. There were so many people who were confident that Hurricane Lee was going to hit Florida. I don't know why, but it was the hype season. So this is either going to be an even bigger hype season, or it's going to be a very, very impactful season. It's going to go one way or another. That's what I personally feel. The CFS is on board with what the European and the GFS velocities are predicting. You could see this is June 2nd to June, I think this is June 10th. I don't understand why this overlay on Tropical Tidbits gets cut off like that, but I believe this is from the 2nd of June to the 10th of June, valid for 0Z to 0Z. And you could see that even the CFS is thinking we're going to get enough wave propagation through the Pacific to start to give us those vertical velocities we want to see that favor tropical development as we go through the month of June. Later into June are even greater anomalies that could indicate our Eastern Pacific and the Caribbean are going to start to come alive as our MJO finally tries to reposition itself. And then it's more or less game on from there. Everything remains very favorable in the upper levels. You can see that here in our latest CPC guidance, looking at where the MJO is going to go right around that same time. Here's June 3rd. This is from the beginning of June and on. You can see we are underneath those very, very good favorable vertical anomalies across our tropics. And even here, this goes hand in hand with what the European model was predicting, showing that our MDR has a good possibility of trying to give us another Brett or another Cindy, if, obviously pending we have that energy coming off of Africa. And so, yeah, that's all she wrote. That's about it, folks. So we have our areas of interest. We're still going to continue to watch what's going to happen for our islands out there in the Caribbean. It looks like on Tuesday, tomorrow, I should say. I can't believe it's already Monday. We're going to have our stuff beginning to form up out there. Well, you know what? We'll go to the icon model so we can look at, once again, an unbiased model and show you guys step by step what could possibly be going on. So this is our 6Z icon. This is as we go through the day today. Nothing yet. But as we begin the day tomorrow and get through Monday and into Tuesday, you can start to see those heavy rain anomalies beginning to propagate towards the north. Jamaica and Haiti look like they're going to get it first before the rest of the island of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico start to feel those effects. And this is another reason why I also wonder if some of the forecasts that are floating around are a little overblown. Because the icon model has not shown us very, very impressive precip values. It looks like a lot of it stays offshore. We get a little bit of a hugging of the southeast and eastern coastline of the DR, as well as the eastern half, the eastern parishes of Jamaica could see some very heavy rainfall. If you switch over to the Canadian model and look at the same thing, the Canadian model doesn't think anything's going to happen. Has nothing erroneous out there whatsoever. The Canadian just does not give this feature a vote of confidence. In fact, it doesn't see a feature out there. There's nothing that the Canadian model tries to pull up, which is very, very interesting. The only one that's really doing it is the GFS. As always, the GFS wants to pull something very scary looking up into the north, and then right there is where we need to watch. Right through here. The European model, if I'm not mistaken, does have something out there. It does have a fairly good amount of rainfall, but even the Euro, I want to know what this is. I want to know why this thing here is like slinging laser beams of precip out there. That almost looks fake. I almost don't want to buy into that. Like, what is going... Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? Do you guys see what I'm seeing? Like, I did this weird wave right here that's coming off of the Florida coast. It looks like it shoots laser beams of rainfall out of it. I've never seen the European model do that. There goes one, bloom. There goes two, bloom. There goes three, bloom. And that's what kind of adds to this overall look of heavy rainfall. I don't know what that's doing. I can't think of a reason as to why it's doing that. I've never seen it shoot blasts of rain like that. That's very odd. Because you can see our system down here begins to come together, but what gets it all blurred are these weird waves. Like, look at this guy right here. This thing. As you step through panel by panel, look at that wave of rain that just, unless... Maybe I'm not looking at this at the right perspective. Let me zoom out. Maybe I'm just being blonde for a second. Okay, yeah. I was being blonde for a second. I can see it. So it looks like there's a very, very weird, disorganized frontal system that's out through the central and western Atlantic. And what we're seeing here, no, actually, that still doesn't make it make sense. Yeah, that still doesn't make it make sense, because that's not our front moving through. I don't know. I really don't know, and I'm not going to try to lie to you guys and say that that's something crazy. I really don't know what's causing that. Because here are our fronts. Our fronts and our troughs would be out there. It looks like maybe there's a weak stationary tail right there on the outer edge of this lingering high pressure. But I don't know. I can't tell what that is. Because I think that is making our rainfall activity out there look far more aggressive, because we're getting peppered by whatever that stuff is that's coming in from the north. Very, very interesting. Regardless, though, it's going to be a rainy week out there. It's definitely going to be a rainy week, for sure, for our Greater Antilles and the Bahamas. Willow's passed out right here. Knocked out in a little ball. But yeah, guys, that's it. That's that. We have our areas to watch. We have our first one here that's going to move up like this. For the love of all things, for the love of all things beloved, if you see anybody advertising tropical storm or tropical cyclone, they're BSing you and they're getting your clicks. I'm going to tell you that right out of the gate. And I'm going to be very bold and almost rude in saying that. They're just getting you to click. They're getting you to subscribe. That's it. It's going to be a heavy rainfall. It's going to be windy. But I do not see anything whatsoever remotely in the slightest, for my Breaking Bad fans out there, I don't have the remotest inkling of where there's going to be development as that thing moves to the Caribbean. Could it start to form up a cyclone as it moves to the north? Absolutely, because look at what it runs right into. It gets pulled into our jet. It gets pulled into the jet right there. So obviously, yes, it could spin up into a low cyclone because it's attached to a jet stream now. But look at that really good upper tropospheric trough, or that tut that just scrapes through the Caribbean that's going to pull it out. It's going to pull that rain out, and as that rain, that convection moves to the north, it's going to help to induce low pressure, and once it gets sucked in by the remainder of our jet stream, albeit diffuse, heck yeah, it's going to spin up into a low. That's natural low genesis. So if you have anybody out there trying to tell you, oh shoot, just like I said, tropical storm Alberto, no, please, no, that's not what's happening here. Very, very vastly different mechanisms. It's not going to be tropical. It's going to be a very, very intense rainmaker for sure, but it's not going to be tropical. Definitely still want to watch down there, though, because it looks like our subtropical jet is officially going to start going to sleep. Look at how weak. I would almost argue that very, very intense severe weather is just about over for the south. Severe weather season might just be coming to an end. What does our 850 millibar winds look like? Yeah, look at that. There's our tropical pattern. There's our trade wind anomaly right there. There's the trade winds. So tropical season is right there. It is right there. And you could see it too, and that's not, I'm going to pull a YouTube classic, not good. And the reason I say not good is look at this very, very dominant mid-level high. Extremely dominant. Shout out to Reed Timmer. That thing is dominating. Look at that high pressure right there. If anything comes out of the MDR, if anything comes out of the Caribbean, if anything comes out of the Gulf, it has one direction to go, and that's right through. So with that being said, we shall see. We're still in a holding pattern. Lots of, speculation, nothing concrete, and I apologize if that pisses a few people off. We're not really forecasting anything hard, but we have areas of suspicion. The first area of suspicion is down here. The second area of suspicion is more or less the same area, just expanded upon as we get better into those, or we get into those more favorable upper level conditions. So we shall see. We'll definitely keep a close eye on everything. I'm watching everything run to run, model to model, day by day, and it gets a little people in the personal department frustrated because I'm always like this looking at the models as they update. So, but thank you all very much for joining in today. We're going to cut the live stream. We are hitting that hour mark. I thought it'd be a little bit lower than this, but you know we talk a lot on this channel, and I do appreciate the wide range of viewers. We have a lot of people in here this morning, so welcome in. If I hadn't said hello to you earlier, thank you very much for contributing to the chat, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button if you liked what you've seen. And we have a couple areas to monitor. We'll go ahead and, like I did on Saturday, we'll wet the taste buds looking at what our long or our mid-range CFS thinks. So the CFS is thinking something could try to wander out of the Caribbean. Not a big vote of confidence. And then down the road into June, stuff really begins to get moist down there. Starts to call for some possible MDR activity with a very, very dominant ridge still out there over the Atlantic. So again, nothing concrete, nothing crazy, but we'll have areas to watch, and this is going to change day by day. We have nothing on the horizon, nothing on the radar right now, which means we could possibly have something tomorrow, we could have something next week. Models are going to go back and forth. I know, we need another Vince. Let's go back to the GFS so we could take a look at what everyone was getting freaked out about. This is what everyone was panicking about the other day. If we go back to the 18Z on Saturday, there it is, Hurricane Vince back. No, we were thinking Major Hurricane Alberto. I don't know what the GFS is thinking, what the GFS is on, but Major Hurricane Alberto coming at the beginning of June, guys. Mark Mutton, I'm just kidding. No, please don't take that seriously. We got to get used to seeing the phantoms out here, the ghosts of Vince popping up on our long-range GFS. So, Kanoi Brown, it is definitely going to be a very interesting season for sure, and we're going to ride it out together here on the Weather Center. So with that being said, folks, we're going to wrap up. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop me a comment in the comment section below this live stream, or reach out to me on any of my regular social medias, my X, my Twitter, my X, my TikTok, and my Instagram. More routine updates as well as more frequent communication if you want to open up that line of communication. And we'll see you back here again on Wednesday morning. Ooh, wait. I just realized my schedule's different on Wednesday. I might have to do a different live stream. To be determined what Wednesday looks like. I might have to do a different live stream on Wednesday because I have drill with the Navy on Wednesday. I have to report. So we might do an afternoon or we might do an evening live stream on Wednesday. We'll see. Maybe I'll do an early afternoon live stream. To be determined. We'll see, guys. So stay on the lookout for any updates regarding that. But Wednesday, we're not going to be available at 9 a.m., so it might be later in the day. Or we might just do it tomorrow. No, we might not do it tomorrow. That's too much. We'll wait. We'll figure it out on Wednesday. For those of you who are new, we do our tropical updates Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, pending my schedule, and we will figure out Wednesday, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming on Friday, 9 a.m. So there is a flooding in the Florida Keys Marathon. I believe it. There's been a lot of rainfall out there, a lot of storms affecting South Florida. So yeah, be on the lookout for a Wednesday update. It might happen closer to lunchtime. It might happen mid-afternoon. But yeah, I have to report in for the Navy on Wednesday, so I will not be here at 9 a.m. But watch for the notification and watch for any kind of community posts or updates on other social media that you may be following me on. So Caribbean, we're watching. Gulf, we're watching. Atlantic, we're watching. We have a heavy rainmaker coming in over the next couple days. Nothing tropical, as how close are we said. We're probably not going to get that early start to the hurricane season, which could go either way. It could be a good sign. It could be a bad sign. It could be a no sign. We'll wait and see, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Just maintain our vigilance and maintain a holding pattern like we have been, guys. But we're getting close. 10 days until the official calendar start day, and then we can say we are in hurricane season. You guys have been a wonderful audience. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you once again. If you have considered hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, you're more than welcome to join us as we ride out this hurricane season together. There's going to be a lot to talk about, a lot to scrutinize, and we will definitely keep you updated. We'll have our Monday, Wednesday, and Friday tropical briefs, and we'll only increase content coverage from there if need be. We'll never get anything less to you guys from the 3 updates per week, and we will only add to the updates if there is prevalent information I need to get across to you guys. So definitely make sure your notifications are turned on as well. I don't say that enough, but you don't want to miss upcoming updates, especially when they matter the most and when we need to get that information out to you guys. The interview went well. Lord willing, fingers crossed. They said we will know whether or not I'll be with National Weather Service by the end of the week, by Friday. No later than Friday, I'll have an update. So maybe for our Friday update, I'll have something good to pass along to you guys. But have a fantastic start to the week. I hope your weekend was phenomenal wherever you may reside. If you're joining us from the Caribbean, from the Gulf of Mexico, from the United States, I pray that if you've been ravaged by the severe weather that went on yesterday and will continue throughout the week, just stay safe, maintain your situational awareness, and hold on. And we will see you again soon on Wednesday, guys. But until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.